Music on the programme right now at 24 minutes past 4.
Steve Yabsley.
BBC Radio Bristol.
I'm delighted to say I'm joined on the line by the wonderful Jeff Topp. Welcome to the programme, Jeff.
Oh, thanks, Dave. Thanks for that intro. It's lovely.
Not at all. Now, Jeff is the author of Your Music is Your Business, an industry veteran's new guide to help musicians find profit from their passion. I see, Jeff, quite apart from that you claim to be able to speak German. Is that true?
Oh, das ist nicht so gut, gerade.
Gosh, sounds like we had a bit of...
No.
How did you learn German originally? What was the reason for learning that?
Oh, many years ago, I think, at school. One school, GCSE, hated every language apart from German. Seemed to have a really good teacher, I think, and it kind of just stuck with me. Went on a family holiday to Austria, and that's where I kind of caught it a little bit, but a bit out of practice of late.
Well, I thought you were very credible a moment ago. Now, Jeff is a seasoned musician. He's a producer, he's an entrepreneur, and now he's a writer. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Jeff, where are you from originally? I'm not sure where you sort of originated. Where were you born?
I'm based down East Sussex way, so between Eastbourne and Hastings area.
I see that early in your career, you worked at Gatwick for a number of years for Service Air. Well, what was that like, working at Gatwick?
It was mad. I'll tell you what, funny enough, we've literally just been having a bit of an online reunion with that, but different times. I think when working in the aviation industry was fun. And I was much younger back then, so we did have some good parties. I know that, back in the early days at the airport.
Well, I tell you what, Jeff, you wouldn't want to be involved in aviation these days, would you?
Not at all, not at all. I know, I've got some friends actually that still there and thereabouts and in that kind of world, and no, it's certainly not the place to be at the moment.
Okay, well, let's talk about your early days in music. You learned guitar, of course, and you were in various bands, I suppose, as a young man performing. Did you perform a particular genre of music when you were a young man? I mean, you were in sort of pop bands, were you? What did you do in those days?
I think, pop, rock, blues. Blues was my kind of go-to at the time, but I think when I learned the trade, I kind of just picked up everything, tried a bit of everything, really, to see what stuck. But, I mean, my influences were like the Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler of this world, Eric Clapton's, the usual kind of thing. And then kind of got influenced a little bit by the American kind of blues scene and gravitated over to B.B. King's, that the really kind of classic blues style.
I absolutely love B.B. King. I was lucky enough to see him. I mean, I know that he did hundreds of gigs every year, but I saw him in Bristol at the Hippodrome. And what a fantastic player. What I liked about him is he's a huge bloke, and he had the guitar, Lucille, on his belly, played a little solo, and he used to flick it under his armpit.
Love it.
He's a super fella. Now, you moved into music licensing, and you became a guitar and bass teacher, and also ran a recording studio, Appleyard Recording Studios, for a decade or so. What was it like running a recording studio?
Amazing, actually, amazing. I mean, it was a real labour of love to get the place up and running in the first place, and we hit the ground running. We actually the studio was opened by Chris Difford from Squeeze at the time, and so he was very supportive with us. And I don't know, off the back of that, we were quite busy, really. We opened, well, I suppose, back in the day when I suppose money wasn't such an issue for record companies. They used to just phone us up and bring an artist in, and they wouldn't kind of query the price of it, which was great. So we had some really good artists, a lot of new artists, and I think that's where the book has kind of come out from, because I used to do a lot of work with new up and coming artists into the industry, and my studio wasn't a big studio, but it was a studio where they could just come and kind of chill out and book it out for 2 or 3 days and just really kind of do some songwriting and just be creative. And we had some really good times back then. As I say, when there was more money in the industry to be able to kind of do that, I suppose.
I tell you what, Jeff, I mean, I've been in lots of bands over the years, and whenever we went in the studio, it was always paid for by ourselves, and we'd always have our eye on the clock, because depending on what studio it was, it could be £10 an hour, £20 an hour, or even more. And you just think, God, we've got to get this done as quickly as we can, to a certain standard. But I suppose if you've got a record label actually footing the bill, it's a little easier for artists to relax, isn't it?
Well, it is and it isn't. They've still got to deliver the goods in the end. So the pressure's more on them, I suppose, on us. But I certainly used to enjoy working with musicians that weren't signed or were self-funding, because it means a lot more, I think, to them at times. So, yourself, when you went in the studio, you time is money, but you want to get it done, and you want to get it done as top notch as possible. So, yeah, I mean, running a studio was an interesting business, really. But it's a hard industry to be in generally at the moment,
and long hours as well. I noticed that quite apart from music, you're also a very talented artist, and you sell your own works via a online gallery called Brushed with Art. Is that watercolours you do? I wasn't quite able to see.
Yeah, watercolours, acrylics as well. So I think it's, I don't know, artist, whether it's music or brush. I think it seems to go down the same creative line. But
there are many examples of Bob Dylan and David Bowie, people that have been talented at art and music simultaneously. Many of them, aren't there?
If I was only that famous, that'd be lovely. And had their money, that'd be different.
You took a music diploma course at Brighton University as a mature student, and you've been a songwriter and composer. You've written music for TV and film. That must be very satisfying when you watch something on television and it's featured music that you yourself have composed. That must be satisfying.
It's amazing, satisfying, and sometimes you don't even realise until you can hear it or someone tells you about it. And that's the strange thing about this industry. I managed to kind of, from a friend of a friend, and after, basically my career has been a case of someone offers you a job and you learn it. Just, you kind of go, well, okay, well, I'll do that. I've never done that before, but I'll learn it and do it. And from that you get kind of requests and suddenly things happen. And I ended up getting a job with a publisher in America to write music for TV, film. So I used to get commissioned to write a piece of music in the style of a certain artist, I suppose. And then I was asked to kind of get that across to them. Wouldn't hear much of it for months, maybe a year to come, and then suddenly I get a royalty come through with your music was played on this, and this, and you think, well, that's amazing.
And Jeff, just tell me, do you tend to get a flat fee for those things, or is it dependent on how many times it's played? For instance, if you wrote the theme tune to Friends, would you continue to get an income ongoing?
I would do, yes. So it was on a royalty basis as opposed to a flat fee, so to say. Which for any artist, I would suggest that's always the best route to go. There is obviously elements when a flat fee might suffice, but if it's something to do with a kind of a TV or film or radio, for example, then the chances are it will be played again and again and again, which means it's best to probably go down the royalty route if you can.
Yeah, and if you write something like the theme tune to Casualty, which has surprised everyone by going for years and years and years, played every week, it's a good constant flow of income, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. Well, all you need is one good Christmas hit. We'd all be happy with one of those, I think.
Well, as you mentioned, you work with many record companies. You've helped develop new artists. You've got this impressive experience in the music industry, which has been consolidated in your new book, which is called Your Music is Your Business, a definitive guide to writing hit songs and making money in the modern-day music industry. Just going back in time, Jeff, and I'm talking perhaps 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, there was a long tradition of artists, and even quite successful artists, and people like, the Bay City Rollers, being thoroughly ripped off by management.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's because they didn't, they were young. Someone comes along to them and says, we want to sign you. They don't look at the nitty-gritty, they don't look at the detail, and why would they, to be quite honest, at the time? But unfortunately, as you say, artists have got themselves into situations where they can't get themselves out of. And, the industry back then was one thing. It's different now, but there's still record companies, and you can still get signed, and you can still technically sign your life away, I suppose, and not really understand what you're signing or what you're getting yourself into. Yeah. And I think... So the book kind of came out working with new artists, and the way the industry has changed in the last 10 years, where the online situation, everyone, you can get your music online very, very easily and very quickly, which is great, but you've got to cut through everything else. You can still get signed now, but it's just good to know your own business, to understand a bit more about how the industry works. It's a music business for a reason. It's business, so it's good for an artist maybe to take a bit more control of their own music now and understand exactly what they get themselves into, and the other opportunities that might be out there that they might not be aware of as well.
You look at the halcyon days, though, of the music business, 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, when they were making real money. I mean, my wife used to work for Tower Records when they had a base in London years ago, only in a small role, but there was a lot of money swirling around in the industry in those days. I mean, they were making money from vinyl, from CDs. It was a real constant stream, and they had a lot of money to spend on bands. You get bands that were signed. I knew a band who was signed to a major label for a few years and were paid weekly. Only ever released one record. They sort of almost squandered the money, didn't they? These days, a lot of young people don't want to pay for music. They want to get it for free, don't they?
Again, the industry's changed, and this is why you know writing a song, hoping that you might get signed, it might not go anywhere. And that's the thing. You've got to really start looking at the other opportunities. And the problem is. Go on, sorry.
No, you carry on.
I was going to say, the streaming is one thing. It's great to get your music out there, but it's not going to earn you a lot of money unless you hit the big time with it.
Now, you claim that any skilled musician can make money from their talent, but many miss the opportunity due to a lack of business knowledge. And this is the thing. I mean, traditionally, by their very nature, musicians are creative people and not possibly on top of the business side of things. I mean, there are exceptions. I mean, famously, George Harrison was very keen on making sure that the tax situation in the Beatles was okie dokie. But many musicians just don't care about that. And then it's too late, isn't it? And they've almost signed away or squandered the talent they had. How can they get, other than reading your book, how can they get that sort of basic building block knowledge of how to make money these days?
Okay, well, I mean, obviously, as a musician, you've got to learn some basics. You obviously get your basics down. But so many years ago, I was asked to do a session for an artist, and it was actually in my early days of playing, and I went into the session, and they said they wanted me to just play three chords for this song. That was all it was. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a guitarist. I've been learning my trade. I can play more than that. But all they wanted me to do was three chords. So I actually went in and did the three chords. Now, the thing is, becoming a session player is not about being the best and the fastest guitarist in the world. It's about being good at what you do. So I would always suggest that you really learn your basics, but learn them well. So if you're an instrumentalist, learn those chords. Get those chords so solid that someone will pay you money, potentially, to play those 3 or 4 chords, but really well. Same with writing songs. You know, a lot of artists out there are songwriters, great, and they create songs from their own ability to write songs by ear, but learn a bit about what the craft of songwriting is. And just because what that's going to do is going to help you, and you're going to be hopefully slightly better than the next person that hasn't done that and understand their craft a bit more. So I think by learning the basics very well should and hopefully will help you, put you in good stead going forward.
Well, I found the book really interesting because you guide the reader through every stage of the process. You cover songwriting techniques, lyric creation, business development, and how you can actually earn a living from music. It's really interesting, actually, the facts that you've crammed into there. What sort of pitfalls do naive but talented musicians fall into then, Jeff?
Okay, well, one thing in particular, if you're a songwriter, is you don't copyright your music. You can earn money from your music without, as I mentioned earlier, if you're putting your music online, it might get picked up by someone. But if you're not covered by the PRS, for example, if you're not listed with them, you'll never get any royalties come through. So you could be making some fantastic music, and you could be getting some money from that. But if you haven't registered yourself, then no one can collect that money for you. But the copyright, I think, is an important part. Is make sure that anything you write is copyrighted, is copywritten somewhere, because it's very easy, as I said, to put it online, but it's also very easy for someone to take that music and claim it as their own.
Now, there is in the book a 10-step process to songwriting. I'm sure some people will say songwriting is magical. It's one of those things that comes out of the ether and you can't really prescribe it. What's your riposte to that?
I agree with that. The process is, a lot of it is my process, the way I work, and I explain in the book that, it's a very personal thing, songwriting, but it's good to be mindful of just some of the bullet points, just to kind of keep you on track, I think, especially from a commercial element. So if you get asked to do, I get commissioned to do certain styles of music, so if they want a commercial hit or a commercial song, not necessarily a hit, but it's got to conform to a certain level. certain parameters, otherwise it won't get played on radio, for example. So it's the bullet points. The points are there as a kind of a reference, as a guide, but they're not carte blanche. It's not set in stone, but it's hopefully to help you trying to stay on track with what you're trying to create as well.
There's so much useful information in the book. You look at contracts and exclusivity, territory, all the sort of things that a lot of musicians wouldn't normally think about. And other things like recording costs and royalties, promotion, one thing and another. It covers all the bases, and I'm sure a lot of keen singer-songwriters or those that just want to produce music will find it so useful, because you've garnered all these tips from a lifetime really working in the industry, haven't you?
I have, and I really wanted to make the book a kind of pick up and put down book. It wasn't a read from start to finish book. It was a case of like, I'm an artist. I'm going to just dip my toe into this section. Let's talk about a bit of theory. Let's look at the music theory, but hopefully making it in a more practical way. If they take it further, and for example, if an artist gets signed and they get a contract thrust in front of them, hopefully this will help them to go maybe just understand the terminology that they're signing their life away, so to speak, or not, or the case may be. So I really wanted it to be a guide where they could just dip in and out of it as and when they needed it, really.
Well, I thoroughly recommend it. I found it so interesting. The book is called Your Music is Your Business. It's written by Jeff Topp with 2 P's, and it's described as the most comprehensive guide of its type on the market. I don't think there is another guide like it, Jeff. It's got a glossary at the back as well, which is really useful. Are you proud of it?
Very, very much so, yeah. It's been a real labour of love for the last 3 or 4 years, this. And I just think, I could just carry on. There's so much more, but hopefully the points in the book are enough for artists maybe coming into the industry or enjoy their hobby and want to take it to the next level. Hopefully they'll benefit from it. And, this is my opinion from experience that I've had. Music is a very kind of creative art, as we've just said, but hopefully some of the points in the book will certainly help them gain a bit more understanding and knowledge of the industry.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Jeff. Real pleasure to have you on the show.
Appreciate it, Dave. Thank you.
There you go. That is Jeff Topp, who is a seasoned musician, producer, entrepreneur, now a writer. That book of his is Your Music is Your Business. You can search for it online, the most comprehensive guide of its type on the market to how you can actually make money from the modern day music industry.